Welcome to the One More Chapter Book Club. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited about our book club as I'm going to be chatting with two fantastic and prolific thriller writers, Sarah Alderson and Richard Parker. Sarah's latest novel is The Weekend Away, a super twisty crime thriller that sees two friends go away on holiday, but only one comes back. Richard's latest release is While You Slept, another unputdownable thriller that asks the reader, what would you do if you woke up in your home, but it wasn't your home at all? Very scary. We'll be keeping this book club spoiler-free as both these books have such incredible and shocking reveals at the end, but we'll be hearing from the authors about how they write such twisty thrillers, and so many. We'll also be running a giveaway for 3 people to win a paperback copy of each book. So all you have to do right now is tag 2 friends in the comments that you know loves thrillers as well, and you can do this throughout the whole book club, and the terms and conditions will be posted in the comments as well. So please start tagging away and inviting any other family or friends that you think will love this discussion. And please ask us lots of questions too. We love hearing from you. But for now, please help me in welcoming Sarah and Richard. Just putting myself away. Whoops. Kind of imperative. Cool. Hello, both.
Hi.
Hi. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you both doing?
Good, thanks.
Very good, thank you.
Very good. So I always like to ask this question first off, but where are you both coming to us live from? Richard, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'm in Salisbury, which is near Stonehenge. Obviously, we had the poisonings, the Novichok poisonings here a couple of years ago, so we're kind of used to what's going on at the moment. You know, it's bad everywhere at the moment, so everybody's coping it, any way they can.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how about you, Sarah? Very cool.
I am in California, just north of LA. Actually, not too far from where Harry and Meghan have just moved.
Oh, really?
Yeah, about 20 miles.
Neighbours.
Except they live in a much more fancy neighborhood.
Can imagine their place is probably pretty humongous.
Palatial, I think, next to Oprah's.
Yeah. That's amazing. So yeah, it's quite early in the morning for you. So thank you so much for joining us from all the way over here. But yeah, so I'm glad that you're both doing well and staying safe. So to get started in our book club, I'm just going to bring some questions up on the screen because I like to do that.
I'm just going to pop out and come in again because I've just got 2 images of you at the moment. I can't hear Sarah.
Okay. Yeah, like we practiced this earlier. Just sometimes the tech. We just got to make sure the tech's all working quickly. But yeah, we'll just keep waiting for everyone to join in as well. But hi to all the viewers out there, and let us know where you're joining us from as well, because I love to hear that too. So I'm bringing Richard back in again. Hi, Richard.
That's great. Back in the room.
You can see me.
Hi. Perfect. You can see and hear both of us now. Cool. Perfect. So my first question to you both on our book club today is, because you're both such prolific writers, we were just chatting earlier, you've got more than the amount of fingers on my hands. Books to both of your names, which is incredible. So I really want to ask you both, how did you first start writing? Sarah, would you like to go first?
Sure. I have quite a funny story in that I never even studied creative writing, and I never thought I would be a writer. It never even crossed my mind to write a book until I was 31. And my husband and I were both working in London. I worked for a non-profit for 8 years, and we decided to quit our jobs and go traveling around the world with our daughter, who was 3 at the time. And we took a loan for a new bathroom, but I also was like, I've got no money and I've got no skills. I need to do something to bring in some money. And at the time, Stephanie Meyer was obviously huge with her Twilight series. So yeah. I was swimming one day and I was like trying to think of ideas to make money. And I thought, well, if Stephanie Meyer can make money from writing about sparkly vampires, so can I. And so I literally went home that day and started writing this book that I came up with while I was swimming. And it turned out to be my first novel, which was Hunting Lila, which was a YA book. And I managed to write it in 4.5 months. And then we went traveling and I sent it to agents, and I got an agent and I sold it to Simon & Schuster in a 2-book deal. And so that was how my writing career started. And then I never looked back.
Yeah, amazing. And now we'll get to that as well. But now you're a scriptwriter as well.
Yeah, about 5 years ago, I decided that Stephenie Meyer had made millions and I hadn't, and so I needed to look at a new route to. And screenwriting, for those of you who don't know, pays a lot more than books. And so I moved into screenwriting off the back of writing my books, and I continue to do both.
Wow, that's really, really cool. Yeah, I'll ask more questions on that in a minute. But Richard, how did you first start writing?
Well, I did it the other way around. I started scripts. I started sending material into the BBC when I was a teenager. Had a few things picked up and used. So I started getting a few writing commissions for various shows. And then I kind of ended up with the job of actually being in the office, reading the material that was coming in as an editor. But then well, I've always liked to be, a contributor to whatever show I work on. And then from that, I went into producing, which I didn't really enjoy. And then having, 15 years of very enjoyable work, I kind of thought I'd like to be more in charge of my work, because although TV is fantastic, it's very collaborative.
It's hugely collaborative. It's not your own work.
Exactly. So I just wanted a bit more control. Even I miss the camaraderie of TV, and it sounds like Sarah's got the best of both worlds, because you kind of do your books in between the TV. Nice being just in charge of a story, and you can stand or fall then on your own work, really.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's so fascinating that both of you come from, in other way around, but both completely entrenched in TV and script writing, and then also book writing as well. I guess. Do you your experience in script writing for both of you, has that really, do you find that's really helped your writing of books, or is it actually really, really different?
I think yes. I mean, I think it's interesting. I started in books and moved into scripts, and it is a very different craft. But I definitely can now see my years of screenwriting experience in how I structure books, and in how whenever I'm writing a book now, I'm thinking of it as a movie. And I always did that kind of, even from my very first books. I think because I spent my childhood watching movies and watching TV, that when it came to writing a book, it was kind of second nature to me, because I'd absorbed through osmosis, just the narrative arc and the 3-act structure. I didn't even know about these things, but I kind of instinctively knew about them. And so now when I write books, though, it's much more strategic, because I really want to try and get those books made into movies. So when I'm writing them, I'm already thinking of how it would work and translate onto the screen.
Amazing. Yeah. Do you think it's it's just helped you in your current books now? Do you feel is it maybe a bit?
I think it helps with pace, maybe. I think it helps with, a lot of my readers will say, oh, it's just like a movie when they read it, because it's quite visual experience and quite pacey. But what about you?
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me, because I was in comedy mainly, and a lot of people say, comedy, is there a connection between comedy and thrillers? And it is basically the same thing, because it's setting up and paying off, and you do it on with a thriller. So it did really, having that training, it means that you could have cut out a lot of the nonsense and the bump and get straight to the story. I think it really did help me when I was learning to write thrillers.
That's so interesting. Why did you choose thrillers then, Richard, instead of comedy or anything else?
Quite a while. I was writing various books, trying to splice genres together and trying to be very clever, and my agent was very she was pulling her hair out. So I realized that I had to find an umbrella and to write stories under that I enjoyed. So I naturally gravitated to thrillers, because I love sort of horror movies and thrillers. So I used that so I could still write the stories I wanted to write, but in a way that people could access, the publishers could say, I know which shelf we're putting that on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it definitely needs to be accessible. obviously. But just so actually, this brings me on to my second question, which I'm going to focus a bit more on your current books now, which is, they're both so brilliant. And I love how, because they both have that sort of, and now it makes so much sense that you are both really entrenched as well in film and TV, because they just both have those really core hooks to them. And I think that, obviously what we were just saying, your TV experience really comes through in that. So my question is, can you tell us about your inspirations for The Weekend Away and While You Slept? Richard, would you like to go first this time?
Sure. Well, it was one of those what ifs, which is the way a lot of thrillers begin. I was just thinking about what if you opened your curtains one morning and there was a completely different view out of your window. That's where I started. And on top of that, to build this idea of a mother and daughter who have that experience. They're expecting to see their backyard. But actually, when they open the curtains, they're looking, it's a 20-foot, they're sort of on the 20th floor of a derelict block on a derelict building site. And they've been trapped inside a complete replica of their home, but they don't know why. They have to work that out, but at the same time, they have to deal with the sadist who basically controls what they're doing inside their locked house. I probably shouldn't go any further than that. So
yeah.
Give away any more than that, but so
that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to read that right now. It sounds very much like a movie as well. I can already
Same as you, I do write in that because of my script background. I write in that at that pace and in that style. So yeah, it's a very pitchable story, I think.
Is that kind of how you came up, as you think about, is it the same with all your books, you think, oh, this is going to be the hook, what's the sort of core mystery or what if situation, and then you go from there?
That's always the starting point for me, and I then like to have an ending in mind, and then everything in between I just like to surprise myself along the way, as long as I make it to the end. That's probably how I've written most of my books now, I think. But always with the hook. The hook's got to come first. Yeah,
love that. How about you, Sarah? What's your...
Yeah, I would 100% agree with Richard. Most of my books start with what if. And I always give that advice to people who are like, oh, I don't know how to start. I always say, if you ever get stuck, just say, well, what if? And that's really how I kind of start, is by coming up with a hook or a concept. So for The Weekend Away, I every year go away for a weekend with my best friend, and whether it's Paris, and last year we went to Lisbon, and I was like, oh, I was reading at the time in the paper stories about Airbnb hosts spying on their guests, and I also had heard horror stories about Uber drivers. And I was just thinking about how trusting we've become, with the social, with the sharing economy. And could I do a thriller set in a foreign city, which always appeals to me, because I feel like that sense of being somewhere foreign and other, where you don't speak the language, where the culture's slightly different, you don't know if you can trust the police. So I wanted to play up that feeling of just being lost in a foreign city on your own. Yeah. So the idea is that these two best friends go away and one of them goes missing on the first night. And so then it's this story of the friend trying to figure out what's happened to her best friend and retracing her steps. And she's kind of, I don't want to give too much away, but it just takes place over a weekend. And yeah, so I guess I just started with what if and went from there. And that's what I've always done.
Yeah, well, I hope that what happens in The Weekend Away hasn't happened. Your trips
no. Thankfully.
I like that, because I hate that feeling of being stranded somewhere when, it's great when you're having a holiday, things are going well, but as soon as things start going wrong, that feeling of insecurity when you're in a place you don't really know, and you don't know,
Yeah, you can't communicate. And yeah, that was what I was going for.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's that sort of, I think that's what is such a, I think I come on to this in one of my other questions, but often in psychological thrillers, it's that sort of feel, you're a familiar situation, but then something goes wrong, isn't it? And that's what you you know, that's what, you know, we as readers find so fascinating. But is that as to write for you both as writers, is that what you're always kind of like seeking to exacerbate as well?
Yeah, I think it helps if it's a situation that people can imagine themselves in, or, you know, it could happen to an everyman, you know, that they can easily picture it happening to them is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all my characters are there. I think I've written 2 police stories that revolved around, you know, a detective. But all the other characters I've ever written have just been ordinary people, and I find them more interesting because people can relate to them immediately, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, do you both find it important to write characters that people will relate to as well?
Definitely. I mean, I don't know about you, Richard, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting reading reviews when people feel like they hate the main character. I think it really turns people off. You know, so having someone that is relatable in some way is really important.
Yeah, and everyday, just an everyday person, rather than you know, having, you know, some kind of you know, romantic lifestyle. If they're just ordinary people, and something terrible happens to them, or they're, you know, they're victimized in some way, I think you immediately have the reader's sympathy then, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I think Sarah's internet just dropped out. I'm sure she'll come back again in a second. But well, she's back again already. Oh, very quick.
There we go.
Back in. Hey, Sarah.
I disappeared. I don't know why. I'm back. Just crashed.
Yeah. Well, at least that was a very quick internet blip, so we're all good. But I'll take that opportunity to bring us onto my next question, which is a little bit what we've been discussing. But as I've been saying, both of your novels have such compelling hooks, and we've talked about how that's so important to you both. But how do you both approach writing these books? You know, like, how do you plot thoroughly, or do you see where the writing takes you? I find this especially interesting with thriller writers, because I guess I often imagine that you probably do need to like plan so much, maybe more than in some other books. But then I've also been surprised by some answers that from other authors where they just see what happens, because they like to surprise themselves. But anyway, how is it for both of you? Sarah, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was just listening to what Richard said about how he has a destination and he kind of has the concept and then heads towards that. And that's definitely how I wrote my first 7 YA thrillers. I just had an idea that was cool, and then I knew where I wanted to get them to, but I made it up as I went, and I loved writing like that. And then something happened when I moved into screenwriting, which, as Richard knows, is much more structured. And so many more people weigh in, and, you know, it has to be a certain number of pages. Like, I write on the show SWAT, and, you know, we spend weeks and weeks breaking story, and every act has to be carefully thought out. Every story has to be broken in detail. And I think that fed into my novel writing, so that now when I do my thrillers, I do plot them much more. I'll write like maybe a 6 to 10 page synopsis outline. But what I do like to do is allow it to kind of like, you know, I don't stick rigidly to it, because, as you know, when you write, you know, characters suddenly do things that you didn't expect them to. And that's kind of my favorite part about writing is that's when you know that they've become their own person. Like, they're not just, I think bad writing is when you're forcing a character to do something because it fits the plot. Whereas if you've created a great character, they should be able to kind of, you know, they'll make decisions that maybe you hadn't anticipated, because that's who they are. And that's kind of fun, because that's when you know that they're living in your head. Yeah. And that's kind of what you always sort of, that's the best way of writing, I think.
Fine, isn't it, when that happens, when they start, you know,
it's great.
Their own, and suddenly you're off in a different direction, you know, where you thought you were going at the start of that chapter. I think that's always a great moment, you know, and it doesn't happen with every book, but you know, I know people.
No, definitely not.
They plan a lot. I know writers who they almost write the whole novel as a plan, you know, and then they're just going back and fill. But I can't. I just have to, you know, see where it takes me. But as I was saying earlier, you know, to have a destination in mind and eventually work my way towards that. But in the meantime, just trying to have some fun along the way. Sometimes you have to go back and you know you've maybe gone down a dead end. But the more I think, the less you do that and write very chapters, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting. Oh, I think I just cut out for a second there, but I think we're okay. Maybe it's my internet. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's really interesting. I just always think it's just so interesting to hear how people, like, how you kind of create your worlds and your stories. But do you also I've seen people, some authors, like, decorate their rooms with lots of post-it notes, or like all those sorts of, like thorough plotting as well. Or there we go. Amazing.
You see my post-it. That's not for a book though, that's for a TV show.
Wow. So yeah, it must just be quite, like, just very, very different kind of writing though for TV then to your novels.
Yes, it's much more collaborative. Like, we're in a room of 12 people, breaking stories. So it's you just have to be really, really good at pitching ideas all the time. But it's good because it helps you hone your craft, definitely, in a way.
Is it very
and there's a lot of character work. Is it very what?
Very competitive. So if you have
competitive. Some rooms in Hollywood can be vile, like really, really hardcore, nasty. But SWAT is actually known as being one of the nicest writers' rooms in Hollywood. Like, just a genuinely nice bunch of people. We've all worked together for 3 years, and we all get along really well. So it's not really competitive at all. It's it's actually pretty supportive, which is nice.
That's nice. Do you ever miss the writing room, Richard? Would you ever go back into TV writing?
I quite miss writing room politics, which is when I was a script editor, I used to, so we'd have performers in, and then I used to, decide on the order that I was feeding material in. So we had to give them some really good stuff to begin with. Then we'd slide in a few that we weren't sure about. Then I'd put in a few of my own, and just time it well. But there's always, competition. If you had more than a couple of writers in the room, there was always a lot of competition. And the one mistake a lot of people made was thinking that when you get writers together, I mean, it's different with Sarah's show because they're talking about one story. But when we used to get writers in, they were very protective of their material. They didn't want to read it out in front of anybody else. It was just they wanted to get it to the performers.
Right.
I kind of miss that because it was good fun. But it's quite nice just, working on your own as well.
I think I love that too. I love being able to bounce between the two because, it's nice to be in control of your words. And with books, you really are. Like, I find the differences. An editor for a book will be like, well, here's some suggestions. You can take them if you want, but don't worry too much. Whereas in TV, it's like, you're changing it. Like, the discussion is like, make the change, send it back in 5 minutes. You don't get a say at all.
Yeah.
Wow. I find it
and you're dealing with dozens of people.
Yeah, that's what I find so interesting. And I don't personally, and I'm probably the people watching right now perhaps don't either. Like, I just have almost, because there's so many writers in the room or whatever, like, how does anything get written? Almost.
Oh, well, because each writer takes an episode. So there's like 18 episodes and you take like 1 or 1.5. When it's your episode, you're running the room and you're pitching your idea and you're like shaping it with other people's input. And then you pitch it to the showrunner, who's like the big boss. This is very much an American way of doing it. Britain doesn't really do it like this so much. And then, it's very hierarchical in terms of, every year you progress up a ladder of, what your job title is. And then on SWAT, you also produce. So you're on set. And so you're dealing with the actors who might have an issue with one of the lines. You're dealing with, last minute changes, like a stunt goes wrong and you have to rewrite a scene there and then. So it's kind of fun. It's great because it's very much like in the moment you're having to make changes. And because of COVID, we were just saying we just had to rapidly rewrite a lot of scripts. And, I quite like the energy of that and the immediacy of it. And then there's nothing like seeing your words being read out by actors and then like appearing on screen. I mean, that's quite extraordinary. It's almost as nice as seeing like your book in, the supermarket when you go in there.
Different. Wow, that's cool. Is it different? Was it different in the writers' room or is it created in a different way in the UK then, Richard?
Yeah, because there wasn't as much. So there weren't as many layers that.
Right.
And what is your title at the moment, Sarah? Where are you at the moment?
I am exec story editor.
Right. Okay.
So still like low mid level.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
But it's 4 years of like full time work. It takes years and years to climb to the top, but then I think it's worth it because you get so much experience. And also the thing about Hollywood compared to Britain is like there is so much more money put into the shows here and put into the writers' rooms, and there's a really strong union that supports writers. Yeah, which is great.
Is that not quite the case here, Richard?
Not at all.
It was when I started. There were bigger budgets, and I was quite lucky to be in television at that time. But now, because it's proliferated, you've got so many channels, so much TV now. There are very few shows with the sorts of budgets that you can have fun with. So I think it's very different here, and I think it would be really interesting to just hearing Sarah talking about it is. It's nice to get an insight into how it works across the pond, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Really, yeah. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but I feel super interesting. I just, the collaboration between, just right, like our kind of publishing and writing, and then the cross into TV and film is super fascinating to me, I think, really. But I've got a question here from an audience member, so I'll bring that up. And anyone else out there, please ask us questions too. Julie says, "Hi, Mel, Sarah, and Richard. Is there a character from another thriller writer who you wish you had created, and if so, who and why?" That's a good question. Who would like to go first?
Oh my goodness, I'm trying to think. Have you got one, Richard?
I suppose it would be a character that has longevity and that they've made several movies about. Nice to be attached to, a Bourne or something like that. A lot of thrillers that I enjoy and that I go back to usually are one-off thrillers. It's a difficult one, but I would say anything with longevity. That would be the answer that a lot of writers would give, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. I love Bourne as well. That's a really hard question, but it's a good one. I guess I really liked Gone Girl. I thought that was a really elevated thriller, and I thought the character of Amy was that was the wife's name. I think it was Amy. Yeah. Amazing Amy, right? And I just thought she was so well drawn. It was a really interesting character, and I didn't think we'd seen people like that before in books. So it was like a villainous woman as well.
I definitely I remember that was Gone Girl was, as everyone says, kind of, I guess, like really did change the genre. I suppose, and it's that sort of different character, but I think it just shows as well, like, why characters are just so important, and like we were talking about earlier, like you just need to have that sort of relatable, but or just like really compelling person that brings you in, like, more alongside the plot, don't you really?
Absolutely.
So my next question for you both is, I'll bring it up on the screen, is that, so again, without any spoilers, but both of your novels center around secrets being uncovered and ultimately rising from the surface. I don't think that gives away too much. I mean, that's a thriller. But do you think secrets should always come to light in the end?
Is this in books or in real life?
Whatever you want to interpret it as, and everyone out there as well. What do you believe as well? Should we tackle it from the book angle? To go first.
I'm trying to think.
Always
do you
have
an answer, Richard?
leave a tidy ending, or
I think in books they've got to, haven't they? Really, because we need those endings. I think you have to give a reader that release. They have to know if you've teased somebody throughout a book, then you have to pay it off at the end, I think. In real life, I think secrets do out whether you like them to or not, and they probably shouldn't in some instances, but definitely in books, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also agree that you can't really leave your readers hanging terribly. Having said that, there's a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end of my novel. I guess I like it when the secret maybe has come out to the reader but hasn't come out to the world. You know, like there's a sense of maybe a character getting away with something can be quite fun. It obviously depends on the book and the plot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, and I guess, you know, that does, I guess my kind of thought with this question was because that does happen sometimes, and in real life, you know, things, you know, you might find, I guess it's like you might find out the answer to something, or, you know, in a book or something, but then people do get away with it as well. It just makes me think of, I was just listening to this podcast about the Crypto Queen. Have either of you like heard it from BBC? No. It's about this she like created this whole thing called OneCoin, like a type of Bitcoin, and it's basically a whole massive like pyramid scheme, and it's just like disappeared, and the whole BBC podcast series is about trying to find her and figure out where she is. So I don't know, that's obviously a real life example of someone that, you know, they now know who did this, but they can't find them.
I mean, it's like the thrillers are built around secrets and secrets coming out. I mean, all the best thrillers, even Bourne. I mean, the secret was, who was he? I mean, that's a great example of an amazing thriller. And I think my next novel, which I'm just working on, is very much about secrets. It's a Me Too thriller, and it's about like trying to get those secrets out. And it's sort of inspired a lot by Weinstein and Epstein and all these men burying their secrets, and how hard it is for, you know, women to speak up and their voices to be heard, and how hard these men try to hide those secrets, and, you know, what the ramifications are when those secrets come to light. I think it's really interesting.
Absolutely, that sounds great. That actually leads me to my next question of which is, can you tell us what you're both working on now? When do you have a title for that yet, Sarah?
I don't have a title for it. I'm literally in the very early stages of it. I'm also working on the script I was telling you earlier for The Weekend Away, which Netflix has just bought. So amazing. I'm in this. I know. Fingers crossed it gets made. That would be amazing. So that's sort of on the side in between SWAT, and I've got to write this book. And I was just finished an edit on my other book, which I wrote under the name Myla Gray for Simon & Schuster. It's like YA romance. So I've just finished one of those, got this script to do, got 2 SWAT scripts to do. My desk is like,
do you
overflowing.
Huh? Yeah, do you sleep?
Do I sleep? Never. I never stop working, literally never stop working.
But I guess, you know, when you love it this much, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I do love it.
Does it feel like, because I guess I think this is also a kind of slight tangent, but for both of you, because I guess people often think of, you know, like writing, or, you know, especially like full-time writing, as like, you know, like a dream, you know, kind of like a dream job, and it would all be wonderful. But obviously it is like still, you know, obviously super hard work. Does it feel like, I guess perhaps there are some days where it does feel like really hard work as well, or do you feel like most of the time you're like, oh, lovely?
I think it's about being your own boss, isn't it? That's the difficult thing. Only you know, working in TV is a little different, but when you're writing a book, it's only you that makes yourself write it, and sometimes that can be, you know, the hardest thing is particularly, you know, you have other things going on, but you just have to just keep writing. You know, if you're writing a small amount a day.
What are you working on now?
I've just finished one, so I'm in that kind of limbo period at the moment. It's gone off to Hannah Todd, my editor, so I should be hearing in the next couple of weeks. So I'm hoping that I can carry on with that. So
I hate that waiting is so torturous. You're like,
No, well, I know, Richard, that Hannah was working on it all this afternoon. So I do know that she was away from her desk editing your book.
Insider knowledge.
Yeah, insider knowledge. But can you tell us as well a bit about what your next book is based on, Richard, and what your idea for it is?
It's tentatively entitled the Crash or the Collision. I think it's still being debated at the moment, the title. But the basic premise, it's a woman who's driving home late at night. She hits a deer with her car, damages the car. Her phone has got no battery power, so she finds a solitary house. A guy opens the door. She feels an immediate connection with him, and he lets her use the phone, etc. She spends about an hour with him before the breakdown truck picks her up. She goes back the next morning because she's intrigued by him, and the house is a crime scene, basically. There's a crime scene tape across the gateway. So she approaches the police and learns that the owner's been murdered. So she said, I was with him last night. I must be the last person who saw him alive. And they said, well, no, this is a woman. She lives here on her own. So she realises that
he was the murderer!
Creepy!
The victim.
Oh my God, I love it! What a great hook.
She then finds out that he's become besotted with her. So he starts pursuing her in his own inimitable way. So that's the springboard into
So
the...
good.
So
You're a master of ideas.
It's just sounds
wait to
awesome.
say, Hannah's read the first 12.
Well, she's commenting on the side saying it's
I'm just saying. She just said, "I'm editing Richard's next book right now, and readers should be excited." The hook is incredible, and the pages up. Amazing. I love the sound of both of your next books, but I think that's, I don't know, just like I just love thrillers, and they just, I think it's just that sort of exciting hook. Just every time, you can tell someone about it, and you're just immediately excited, aren't you, as a reader? Well, that's how I feel. Anyway, but actually, that kind of leads on to another question that I had for both of you, which is, why are you both drawn to writing psychological thrillers? Because I think that's an interesting one. Like, why have you chosen to write them as well? Who would like to go first? Sorry if you're mulling it over stuff.
Are you ready, Sarah? Or...
I guess I'm really interested in psychology. That sounds really stupid, but
That's really interesting.
I find a lot of inspiration reading websites about like psychology and the reasons people do things. And I guess that leads into character. It's like, I believe that a lot of what happens in our childhood informs who we become. And I think it's then interesting to create characters using some, I guess, whatever it is about them that intrigues me, and I want to explore that. And then obviously that's kind of more of the villain. But then for the protagonist, it's usually, I don't know, there's just something taut, intense, and I don't really like horror, but I think thrillers are that borderline between like nail biting, but also just like anything that kind of messes with your head is really interesting, like the paranoia and digging up secrets and trying to figure out who people are, I suppose, would be an answer. It's not a very good one, but
yes. How about you, Richard?
Well, I think my criteria is always, I'd like to write books I'd like to read, and they are the sorts of books I like to read. Sarah's Weekend Away sounds great, that idea of somebody going missing and then uncovering secrets about that person while you're trying to find them. You're going to be reading that into the small hours. So any those, I love those sorts of books. I think somebody called my last book a roller coaster popcorn thriller. I don't know whether being complimented, but actually I quite like that. I mean, I don't recommend eating popcorn on a roller coaster, but those are the subjects I love, so that's why I write.
So is it both as well, like they're books that you just love to read as well, so then it's also what you like to write too?
Yes, I would say so.
Definitely. Awesome. Lots of lovely comments on the side. Catherine also says that she loves the psychological thriller. I think as do we all. So my final question for you both is one that I always like to ask at the end of our book clubs, and it's for everyone else out there to answer too. And this is, what would you say about the book when pressing it into someone else's hands?
A roller coaster popcorn thriller.
Yeah, that's an amazing description.
I'd probably say, but the greatest compliment I think a thriller author can be paid is if somebody says, I was up reading it until 4:30 in the morning.
Definitely.
So as I was putting to somebody's hand, this will keep you up until 4:30 or your money back. That's how I would sell it, I think.
That's a really good way of selling it. I think that, and I'm also really happy. When readers are like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. And that feels like a real victory if you've managed, because a lot of readers are quite cynical and be like, oh, I can tell who it was from the first chapter. And I love being able to upset, expectations. So when people are like, I had no idea the whole way through, or I guessed this person, and it was completely wrong, that always makes me feel really happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's always great. If you can blindside people, and readers actually like to be able to predict a story, and if you give them something they weren't expecting, they actually don't like it sometimes.
Yeah.
But when I read a book, if an author can spring a twist on me that I didn't see coming, I think it's the ultimate experience as a thriller reader, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess I've been thinking about this as well lately, because I guess we've often heard, many a time over the past few years, oh, the psychological thriller, it's there's going to be a new thing, there's going to be the next thing, but it's ever popular, it's ever the main majority of our charts, everywhere basically. Do you think that maybe in some ways it's become harder to be a thriller writer, or because all readers and audiences have become so they're very clued up, and they it's harder to surprise them maybe than before, or do you not think?
Always, for me personally, there's always a new technology that comes along that you can build a thriller around, and that makes. I think that's the important thing, is making it fresh and giving a reader something that isn't formulaic, and giving them a surprise. And if you can keep on doing that, then I think the thriller will last forever, I think.
I 100% agree. I think it's just about finding a new way in, and as every things are always changing. So for example, using the Airbnb and the Uber stuff, I couldn't have probably done that 5-10 years ago, but so it's looking around you at the world and seeing, okay, what do I want to tell a story about? What would be interesting? But yeah, I think people will always love thrillers.
Yeah, exactly. I think so too. But yeah, I think that's what you both do in your two newest books. While You Slept and The Weekend Away, bring something just completely new again to the genre, and can totally keep what kept me guessing the whole way through. And so I don't want to give away any spoilers, because I like to keep this a spoiler-free book club for everyone. But for both of these books, readers, it'll be unputdownable. You'll be reading into the small hours, and you won't guess that ending. So I think that is, as we've been saying, absolutely key in a thriller. Amazing. But yeah, so I think that brings me to the end of my questions for now. But it's been such a wonderful discussion, and we've had lots of everyone out there. Thank you so much for commenting and tagging all of your friends, and we'll be selecting 3 lucky winners later, who will be able to win a copy each of these 2 brilliant books, and then you can let us know your thoughts as well. But it's just a great discussion, so thank you so much to you both.
Thank you for having us.
No, thank you so much. Well, there's one last question. Shall we do one last question, or?
Sure.
Maria, don't like to leave the people that are waiting out there. So Maria asks, is there any character on your books that you would like to be real? A fun question for a thriller writer.
Oh, I also write romance novels.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
No, just kidding. I like Constandin, who's a character in my book, The Weekend Away, who surprisingly, a lot of people in the reviews were like, "Oh, I love him," and that was really nice to hear, because in my head he was Goran Visnic, you know, the actor who was in ER. So I'd bring him to life happily.
Amazing, yeah, happily. That sounds good. Now, how about you, Richard?
I don't think so. I don't think it would be a good idea. I really don't, because most characters in my books are the most interesting characters to me are the psychopaths, and I certainly wouldn't want any of those people to be real. But definitely in films played by actors, yes, I'd love to see them, you know, brought to life in that way, but not in real life.
Fair enough. I think, yeah, on the thrillers, I think that's a good and sensible answer. But that's what makes them such exciting books to read. So such brilliant characters. Amazing. So that was our last question. But yeah, thank you so much again to both of you for joining us. It was such a fun discussion, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Thank you. Bye.
I'll disappear, Richard and Sarah, for now, and then I'll tell you all about next week. But yeah, thank you so much to you both. I'll just take the stream. Bye. Thank you. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. It was brilliant to hear from such prolific thriller writers, and also to hear so much about their film and TV experience and script writing. I found that super fascinating. So please make sure you've tagged 2 of your friends for the chance to win a copy of The Weekend Away and While You Slept, and we'll let you know, we'll contact the winners tomorrow. For now, I'm just going to tell you about next week. So please join me next Wednesday at 1 p.m. UK time, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, when I'll be joined by Rebecca Smith and Nicola Gill to discuss their hilarious most recent novels, Faking It and The Neighbours. So they're sure to have you laughing out loud, so do check them out over the weekend. But for now, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.